Immigration and Customs Enforcement officer in St. Paul, Minnesota, was forced to fire shots at an SUV driven by an illegal immigrant from Cuba after the migrant allegedly struck him and a second agent with the vehicle. That same wanted migrant is also accused of biting another agent as officers took him into custody outside his apartment. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security says the wanted man entered the U.S. in 2024 under a Biden-era policy, admitting people despite lacking entry documents. That policy has since been discontinued under President Trump.
An immigration enforcement advocacy organization says the immigration lottery visa program that allowed the Brown University and MIT shooter to obtain a green card is a gimmick that has not worked. Here's AFN's Chad Groening.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has announced that at President Trump's direction, she has suspended the diversity visa lottery, which she says was used 8 years ago by the now deceased man accused of murdering 2 Brown University students and a professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Noem said, quote, "This heinous individual should never have been allowed in our country." She said the pause is, quote, "to ensure no more Americans are harmed by this disastrous program." Ira Melman is media director for the Federation for American Immigration Reform. He agrees that this diversity visa is a bad idea.
The idea that we would be picking new citizens of the United States almost literally out of a hat is kind of the dumbest way to run an immigration policy. Rather than go and fix the system, which does not really allow us to take the people who are most likely to contribute in this country, they went and created this gimmick, and it has not worked. And we have seen, especially now, the consequences of it.
The administration has not said how long the suspension might last or if it plans to propose permanent changes. I'm Chad Groening.
Hundreds of laws were approved this year in California, and many of them will take effect in 2026. Fox's Kristen Goodwin.
The California laws include protections for consumers, renters, and students. One requires food delivery platforms to give Californians a full refund if the order is not delivered or if the wrong order was delivered. Another requires rental units to have a working stove and refrigerator for tenants. The California Combating Auto Retail Scams, or CARS Act, will allow folks to return a used car for a refund within 3 days of buying it. It will also require dealers to disclose the full cost of a vehicle up front, preventing them from adding useless fees. And the Phone Free School Act will require every school district, charter school, and county office of education to adopt a policy limiting or prohibiting the use of smartphones during school hours by July 1st.
In final news, Instacart is ending a program where some customers saw different prices for the same product ordered at the same time from the same store when using the delivery company's service. The program was meant to help grocers and other retailers learn more about what kinds of prices customers would pay for items, similar to how stores offer different prices for the same products at different locations. But it raised alarms after a report from Consumer Reports and 2 progressive advocacy groups said Instacart offered nearly 3 out of every 4 grocery items to shoppers at multiple prices in an experiment. Find more news on AFN.net.
As we watch world events unfold and fulfill Scripture, it's hard to believe anyone could doubt God and His Word are real, and yet there are so many who either question or completely refuse to believe it. The God Who Speaks is a 90-minute documentary that hits the doubt head-on with evidence that proves God is real and His Word is the ultimate authority. Watch it anytime and invite others to watch with you. Just visit stream.afa.net. That's stream.afa.net.
We inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to The Core here on American Family Radio. I'm Walker Wildmon, glad to be with you on today's edition of the program. Christmas is just right around the corner, just a couple of days away. And so I wish you and your family a Merry Christmas. This will be our last live show before Christmas and Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And so Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you and your family. And we've got a jam-packed show for the next 55 minutes, and so we're glad to have you with us here on American Family Radio. Once again, I'm Walker Wildmon. I'm your host for the program today. As a reminder, we have our Hannah's Heart Conference 2026 coming up at the end of January. This is our first ever Hannah's Heart Conference coming up at Hope Church in Tupelo, Mississippi on January 30th and 31st. It's a conference aimed at ministering to women that have experienced infertility, miscarriage, singleness, hard diagnoses, and other challenges as part of their life. And so Hannah's Heart Ministry is a ministry of American Family Association. They have a weekend program on AFR that you can listen to, and they're going to have their first ever conference at the end of January. So if you want to check that out, find out more information, just go over to afr.net, afr.net right there on the homepage. All right, not wasting any more time. My oldest son, Luke, is with me, and this is his first big debut on the radio. I think he's been in with me before, but just kind of sitting in my lap, just watching everything. You like that? Is that funny? So, Mr. Luke, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Yes, glad to have you on. You sound good. Pull that mic just a little bit closer to your mouth. And so Luke, as part of his curriculum at his school, he has been memorizing Scripture. And I knew he was memorizing a part of the Christmas story. I wasn't sure to what extent. And he and I have been driving to school every morning, and he is memorizing Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 14. And so I was hearing this kind of as the weeks went on in November and December, and then we had some friends over from our church to our home last week, and I was getting ready to read the Christmas story to the kids of our class, the children of of our church members, and before I did, Luke came up and whispered in my ear and said, "Hey, Dad, just let me recite Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 14. So I said, sure, go at it. And he memorized and recited the entire 14 verses of Luke chapter 2. So I thought, what better thing to do just a couple days before Christmas? There's Mr. Parrish looking at you through the glass. What better thing to do as we head into Christmas Eve than recite part of the Christmas story? And so, Mr. Luke, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Whenever you're ready, this is going to be Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 14, as memorized by my oldest son, Mr. Luke Wildmon.
And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And this taxing was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. And all went to be taxed, every one into his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth, into Judea, unto the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child. And so it was that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. And the angel said unto And there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them. And they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you, ye shall find a babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly hosts, praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men.
Excellent job, Mr. Luke. Give me a high five, buddy. Good job. Wow, that's 13 verses more than I've memorized. Good job, buddy. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
And now you can go back to your class, go back to your teacher after the new year, and tell your teacher, say, I recited all 14 verses live on the radio. Can I get bonus points? and then see what she says. I think she'll give you some bonus points for doing this. Good job. All right, give me a high five, buddy. Love you.
Love you too.
Good job. Very proud of you. All right, that's my oldest 8-year-old, my oldest son, who is 8, Luke Thomas Wildmon. Good job, buddy. Very proud of you. And I mentioned him doing this, and I mentioned it last week, and then this morning he calls me and says, "Hey, Dad, remember what you told me I could do?" And so I said, "Yes, you're right. Come on in." So there you have it. That's Luke reciting Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 14. I mean, Luke chapter 2, rather, verses 1 through 14. Very fitting for the Christmas season. And what a blessing. What a blessing it is when your children are memorizing the Word of God and applying it to their lives. There's no greater joy than to see that your children walk in the way of the Lord. So there you have it. Merry Christmas. And if you don't want to listen to me for the next 50 minutes, I completely understand, right? That was the blessing of the day and of the week there. Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 14. Well, hey, one thing I do want to talk about, a couple news stories as we wrap up this segment, and then we'll have a couple guests over the next 2 segments. But this idea of Christ not being in Christmas, which is this radical, godless idea of, hey, let's have Christmas, but let's not have Christ, is a very real thing. And I've got this story right here out of South Carolina as we continue our Christmas theme, and this is out of a small town in South Carolina, Mullins, South Carolina, to be specific. And basically, this small town committee had set up a nativity scene in a parking lot right outside of a marketplace in the town center, basically. And this committee wanted to have something that was attractive and that celebrated the Christmas season and that drew in people from the surrounding communities. Just something that people can remember. Hey, remember that, nativity set in Mullins, South Carolina? And so that was the goal, very pure goal. And the mayor fell victim to, if you will, or fell into the trap of the whole, separation of church and state, because this was technically a public parking lot, I believe, managed by the city, right outside of this private market. And anyway, the mayor decided he was going to be the Grinch. He was going to be the Grinch, and he was going to send this committee a letter and tell them, hey, you got to pull that nativity scene down. But what I love about the lady who was heading up this committee, whose her last name's Pickett. Let me pull up her full name. The mayor is Mayor Pickett. And the lady that was setting up this nativity scene her last name is Bird, Kimberly, there she is. Kimberly Bird was a community member that this whole idea came from. Her and several friends, they funded the whole thing by themselves with private funds, set up this nativity scene near the city center. And nonetheless, the mayor pulls a Grinch move and sends a letter, hey, you got to pull this down, separation of church and state, blah, blah, blah. Typical, Freedom from Religion Foundation move. And what I love about Kimberly Bird is she said, basically, hey, thank you for the letter, but we're not taking it down. We're not taking it down. We're not taking the nativity down. And so this small town and this community committee has defied the mayor and said, no, we're not taking the nativity scene down. Do you want to know why we're not taking it down? Well, there's multiple reasons. But the first reason is that without Christ, there is no Christmas. And so this notion that our country can have Christmas, but we've got to kick the nativity scene out of it. Are you kidding me? So not only is there no Christmas without Christ, but furthermore, there's a strong argument that can be made that there's no America without Christ. And let me explain for those who have just piqued your interest in this conversation. If you don't have Christ, the Messiah, then you don't have a New Testament. If you don't have a New Testament, then what on this earth are the pilgrims going to use as their bases for starting this thing called America, whose primary purpose was to propagate the New Testament gospel of Jesus Christ to the lands far, far away? And so all of this is interconnected, and this is why studying history, which includes the most comprehensive historical text that has ever existed, the Bible, helps you understand that the Bible isn't something that has just impacted humanity 2,000 years ago or 4,000, 5,000 years ago, looking at the Old Testament. The Scripture and the life of the Messiah, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, his life has impacted all of humanity throughout all of time, and more specifically, throughout the time since his life was on this earth. And so this is much broader than a misunderstanding and an improper understanding of America's Constitution and religious freedom and debunking the hoax that is separation of church and state that never has existed in any of the official text of our Constitution and our Bill of Rights and our Declaration of Independence. That's not found anywhere. They cherry-picked some writings by Jefferson, where Jefferson actually meant the opposite of what they construe this to be. Jefferson was basically saying, hey, state, you need to keep your hands off the church. You need to leave the church alone and let people of faith exercise their religion unhindered from government interference. That's what the context was. This was in no way meant and intended to be construed to undermine the First Amendment and to make it to where we can't display acts of faith and Christianity in the public square. That's absolutely not what was intended, because we've got 10 Commandments monuments all over the place, all over our government buildings. We've got Creator God cited as the reason we have the Bill of Rights. There is no Bill of Rights without Creator God, which means there is no Bill of Rights without Jesus Christ, who taught all of these principles that we have in Scripture that we learn from and that our founding fathers relied upon to build this society that we have. And so kudos to Kimberly Bird and the group of believers there in Mullins, South Carolina, who said, no, we're not taking the nativity scene down. We're not taking the nativity scene down. And maybe they'll find somebody to replace the mayor. Probably a good plan for Christmas next year. Find a mayor that understands our Constitution, understands religious freedom, understands the deep religious and historical history, Christian history, that formed this great republic. Folks, don't be ashamed of the gospel. Don't be ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. We must stand firm in what seems like small or trivial circumstances like this nativity scene. But folks, situations like this are an indication of whether you're ashamed of the gospel or not. We'll be back in a few.
Always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Many who oppose Christianity target their hostility on our foundation, the Bible. They say it's unreliable because Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 are contradictory accounts of the creation story. In actuality, the two chapters are complementary and not contradictory. When Jesus was asked about marriage, he quoted from both chapters 1 and 2 in saying that he made them both to be male and female in the beginning, and for this cause shall a man leave his mother and father and cleave unto his wife. Genesis 1 is an overview of the creation story. Genesis 2 is an up-close examination of day 6. If Jesus relies on them both, so can we.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III. public policy analyst for the American Family Association.
The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Hey, it's Michael Woolworth with Bible League International, and what a joy and comfort those words bring when we read those in our own Bible in the early part of John's Gospel. He tells us that God made good on His promise to give us Jesus, right, who's with us and He's for us. Oh, the joy to read that around our dinner tables and in front of our fireplaces around Christmas time, but to think there's Bible-less believers around the world who've been denied God's Word. They've never been able to read the Christmas story for themselves, but oh, the joy of thinking of many Christians who will have that privilege this year. AFR listening family, we want to bless 7,000 Bible-less believers around the world this Christmas. You've done it for 3,000. We've got 4,000 to go. So at $5 a Bible, $100 sends 20, $500 blesses 100 waiting believers. Would you pray about it and call 800-YES-WORD? 800-YES-WORD. That's 800-YES-WORD. Or give it sendbiblesnow.org. Sendbiblesnow.org. And God bless you for caring this Christmas season.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. A vacation with a purpose. That's what we call our tours here at American Family Radio, American Family Association, because we go and we see and we do and we have great fellowship and fun and food, but we also have a purpose in visiting the places we go to, a spiritual purpose, a historical purpose, and that's going to include our tours in 2026. Here are the tours. We're going to Washington, D.C. We're going to George Washington's Mount Vernon. We're going to Colonial Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown. We're going to Boston, Massachusetts. So if you want information on any of those tours for 2026, the dates, the prices, the itinerary, go to this website, wildmangroup.com, WILDMON group.com, and we hope to see you on one of our 2026 Spiritual Heritage Tours.
At the Core podcasts are available at AFR.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the program on American Family Radio. I'm Walker Wildmon. This is At the Core. And at the very beginning of the last segment, my oldest son, Luke, joined me and recited Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 14 by memorization. He did a very good job. I'm very proud of him. And if you want to listen to that, you can subscribe to the podcast and go to today's episode. And within the first 3 to 5 minutes, we introduced my son and we had him cite the part of the Christmas story, Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 14. So you can go to wherever you listen to podcasts, click this show At the Core, find the show, click the subscribe button, and find this episode, December 22nd episode of At the Core, and you can listen to that and let it be a blessing to you. Well, one clip I want to get to in the next few minutes before we get to our guest for this segment is David Bahnsen, who's very well known in the investment and financial world. He's managing partner and founder at the Bahnsen Group and handles billions of dollars in portfolios. He was commenting on Fox Business recently about the so-called dividend checks that the Trump administration has been touting. And he's got a little bit of a different take on this, and one that I actually agree with. And so President Trump has said, hey, we'll take these tariff revenues and we'll turn them into dividend checks, or we'll turn them into stimulus checks and send them out to the American people to the tune of $2,000 or $3,000 a piece. Sounds a lot like what happened during COVID. Well, David Bahnsen had something to say about this and what he thinks about it. So this is going to be clip one. Let's listen to David Bahnsen.
I want to get back to the dividend checks. Yeah. I know you've got a lot to say about that. The $2,000 dividend checks paid for out of tariff duties.
Okay, well, it's fun that we were just talking about dividend stocks because they pay a dividend to owners from the profits. Calling this, what the administration is proposing, a dividend check bothers me. It's a redistribution check. Where did the tariff revenue come from? From the small businesses, big businesses paying it. They're not refunding it to the people who paid it. They're taking it and then giving it to other taxpayers below certain income levels. Bernie Sanders loves these ideas. Elizabeth Warren loves these ideas. It's redistribution. People can either think it's a good idea or a bad idea, but it's not a dividend. It's taking taxes from some Americans, business owners, and giving it to other Americans. I think that it is unnecessarily inflationary. It's new money, stimulates demand. But what we need is more supply. That's how we bring inflation down. Produce more goods and services. And also, it employs people and it gives them happier lives. I'm all for that.
Yeah, I agree with Bonson here. Look, we don't need more money pumped into the economy through stimulus checks, dividend checks, whatever you want to call this. We need supply growth, and we need less government and less stimulus in the economy. And the reason we got to where we are today is because over the course of 24 to 36 months, the government printed an additional $7 trillion that wasn't already in circulation in the economy, and that's what gets you 10% inflation, which in actuality, in most of the categories, it was like 40 to 50% inflation. So the whole 10% number is really a joke. But that's how you get this out of control inflation, is because the government pumped $7 trillion into the economy over the course of about 24 months. Absolutely insane. And under 100% of those scenarios, you will get inflation. And so I don't want a measly $2,000 check from the federal government for anything. I want the federal government to quit printing trillions of dollars every year and spend less money, which will drive down inflation. And so there's a lot of free market principles, small government principles that will drive down inflation and improve the cost of living for Americans. The last thing we need is to send out another round of stimulus checks. Because when you look at the inflation damage and how inflation and high interest rates have just eaten away at income growth, then $2,000, that gets you what? Like a month of groceries? I mean, my point is the damage that you're going to do by sending out more stimulus money is terrible. It's terrible. And the $2,000 is going to be eaten away just like that. And so that's how about we do $2,000 in real income growth, because we drive down inflation so much that over the course of 6 to 12 months, boom, I've got $2,000 back in my pocket from income growth, from actual productivity and work, as opposed to writing everybody a $2,000 or $3,000 check. I think it's just patently absurd. And by the way, what about our deficit? Why don't we take the $300 billion, $200 billion, whatever you're saying you're bringing in tariff revenue? Why don't you just pay down the deficit? Do something like that. We don't have to always keep spending more money every time we come across $50 billion or $100 billion in extra revenue for the federal government. Well, Marty, we do have our guest with us. All right, former Oklahoma House Speaker is with us now. Charles McCall is with us, former Oklahoma House Speaker. He's on with us to talk about Oklahoma politics and some of the things that they did under his tenure as Speaker, which was one of the longest, if not the longest, speakerships in Oklahoma State history there. Speaker McCall, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you today.
Well, Speaker, correct me if I'm wrong, but your tenure as Speaker, which went multiple cycles, multiple terms, was one of the, if not the longest tenure there in Oklahoma. Is that correct?
That's correct. It was 8 years. I was Speaker of the House in the Oklahoma legislature. Of course, in Oklahoma, we have term limits. You have 12-year total term limit in the Oklahoma legislature. Not a real long time for Speaker in comparison to speakers across the nation, but in Oklahoma, the longest.
Speaker McCall, the Oklahoma, I think it's fair to say, is one of the most conservative states, broadly speaking, in the union. When you look at how they vote from a presidential perspective, and of course with your governor there, and then your time as Speaker, Oklahoma is one of the reddest states, I would say, in the country, if not the reddest state. And tell us a little bit about your time as Speaker. I know you guys fought back against this dangerous transgender agenda, and especially these harmful procedures on minors. Tell us a little bit about that.
My pleasure. And yes, Oklahoma has a very conservative people statewide, quite honestly. We spent a lot of time, I had 4 years of the Biden administration during my speakership, and we spent a lot of time pushing back against these very dangerous policies and agendas. And I'm proud to serve with some men and women in the Oklahoma legislature that, we pushed back. We banned gender reassignment surgeries for minors in our state. We banned critical race theory being taught. We banned mask mandates during the COVID period. We protected women in sports and banned boys from girls' restrooms and a lot of other things. But, that's very important for us to maintain our identity, our conservative family, traditional Christian values here in Oklahoma. And that's what the people of the state expect out of their elected leaders.
Another thing you guys have worked on is pushing back against this recreational marijuana push, this big marijuana push, which is unfortunately spreading across the country. Now you've got the Trump administration trying to reschedule it, actually through executive fiat, which I'm not even sure that's going to hold up legally because it's a statutory classification. Nonetheless, there's a pretty big lobby trying to make everybody go soft on marijuana and basically just make marijuana, over the counter at the convenience store, basically. Tell us what you guys have experienced there in Oklahoma with this marijuana push.
The legalization of medical marijuana in the state of Oklahoma has been very difficult for the state to get its arms around, set up a framework and an enforcement mechanism. That came to the people of the state of Oklahoma because we are such a conservative state. But we do have a provision in our state's constitution that allows for initiative petition. That was a measure that was pushed by an out-of-state group. It got voted in, and now we have experienced having to deal with every foreign cartel on the globe operating in the state of Oklahoma for drug trafficking, human trafficking, all of the most nefarious things that you could imagine have been taking place in Oklahoma. And we've had our Constitution prohibits the foreign ownership of land in the state of Oklahoma. We stood up some laws to try to codify that in statute and start that process of identifying and getting rid of it. We started out with a very free market approach from that initiative petition that passed. There were over 9,000 grow licenses issued in Oklahoma from the advent of that passage. Those are down to about below 1,700 now, and probably on their way below 700 or so next year. But it's been a very damaging to families in the state of Oklahoma and businesses. We are seeing lots of ripples and ramifications from it in terms of, we have children coming to school that either they may not be prescribed, but their parents are, and, secondhand smoke and really they're numb when they come. Some schools are reporting students just not in the capacity to learn because of it. It's very problematic, and these groups aren't stopping. They know if they can come in and change Oklahoma, they can flip a very conservative state blue. They can do it anywhere. And we're going to see that there's a initiative petition right now, signatures being gathered to change the election cycles in Oklahoma to jungle primaries, California-style open primary system.
Once again, we're talking to former Oklahoma House Speaker Charles McCall about some of his conservative victories over the years in his 8-year tenure as House Speaker there in the state of Oklahoma in the state legislature. Let me ask you this, Speaker McCall. Your run for governor. Tell us when Governor Stitt's term is up and when you're on the ballot, and is anybody else running against you in the Republican primary?
All the statewide offices in Oklahoma are up for re-election in 2026. And there's only one statewide elected official currently that does not reach their term limit. But Governor Stitt's term limit is in 2026. We'll have an election cycle this next year for the new governor of the state. And being an open seat, as you can imagine, there are 7 declared candidates right now just on the Republican ticket, 1 Democrat that I'm aware of. But this will be a heck of a campaign cycle in Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch. We have to keep Oklahoma very conservative because it's a conservative stronghold right now, and you just can't lose that momentum during this opening in 2026. Well, what are the things, before we let you go, Speaker, what are some of the things that you would like to tackle if you were elected governor? What are some of the things that you would like to tackle, whether it be in partnership with the federal government, since you have President Trump in the White House, or even just some statewide issues? What are some of the priorities?
It'll be a continuation of school freedom in the state of Oklahoma, which I ran the bill that enacted universal school choice or school freedom in the state of Oklahoma. And that was really supporting all forms of education, whether it's faith-based, homeschool, public school, charter schools. We have started down the path also of eliminating our personal income tax in the state. We have passed a bill now to phase it out, the Tennessee model. I want to expedite that to the greatest extent possible. Let's get to zero in Oklahoma. Let's quit penalizing people for working hard. Let's incentivize them to be more productive, and let's try to create the environment for everybody to be successful monetarily. And the government's going to have plenty of revenue on the consumption tax side structure to fund the core services that the people want. For me, we've also got to continue to protect our freedoms and liberties at every turn. They're always being pressed and chipped away at. Oklahoma is a state that loves freedom, liberty, our constitutional rights, and we're going. And as governor, I'm going to continue to make sure that we fight for every family in the state.
Well, we've been talking to former Oklahoma House Speaker Charles McCall, who served in that position for 8 years and is now running in the Republican primary for the governorship, for the gubernatorial seat there in the state of Oklahoma, which is up in 2026. Here in under a year from now, folks in Oklahoma will be voting in November of 26 for these various positions. Mr. McCall, thanks so much for coming on the program, and we appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Merry Christmas. Thanks so much. That's former Oklahoma Speaker Charles McCall on with us to talk about some of his time as House Speaker there in Oklahoma and why he wants to run for governor, why he is running for governor for election in November of 2026. And we've got a lot of stations there, a lot of coverage there in the state of Oklahoma. Well, Paul Vaughn, peaceful pro-lifer who was targeted by the Biden administration, he's going to be on with us in the next segment, talking about why we need to repeal this thing called the FACE Act. It's what President Biden and his Department of Justice used to target pro-lifers exclusively during the Biden administration. So we'll talk with Mr. Vaughn about that and his experience and why the FACE Act must go here in a few minutes. Stay tuned. The American Family Association's mission is to inform, equip, and activate individuals to strengthen the moral foundations of our culture. We also support the church. Our goal is to be a leading organization in biblical worldview training for cultural transformation. We believe true morality flows from biblical principles and directs people to the manner in which God intends them to live.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association as we seek to stop the erosion of godly values.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildmon and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney empire. The movement Don started paved the way for Christians to boldly stand for truth and righteousness in a hostile culture. Watch Culture Warrior today for free. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
American Family Association President Tim Wildmon.
Why does AFA exist? Well, we're here to inform, equip, and activate individuals and families to transform the culture. We want to make an impact on our country for Christ. That's the reason my dad, Don Wildmon, started this ministry 40 plus years ago. Dad was concerned about the direction America was headed, and he was determined to do something about it. Maybe that describes you today. If it does, I want to strongly encourage you to consider a charitable gift annuity to American Family Association Foundation. This will benefit you, and it will ensure that we stay in the fight for a long, long time to come. That's the AFA Foundation.
Call the AFA Foundation at 800-326-4543, extension 345. That's 800-326-4543, extension 345.
Every year, beginning in late summer, we hear retail analysts making predictions about the Christmas shopping season, how great it will be in terms of sales. Occasionally, someone will say, "This could be the greatest Christmas ever." The correct response to that prediction is, "I thought the first Christmas was the greatest one ever." Now, I'm not trying to be a Scrooge or anything, and I appreciate the opportunity to purchase gifts at Christmas as much as anyone. But in the midst of all the predictions and projections about the greatest Christmas ever, let's not lose sight of the first Christmas, the one that will never be surpassed. This is David Jeremiah encouraging you to get on the road to new life. Discover God's reasons for Christmas on Route 66.
Route 66, driving the word home. Log on to Route66Life.com and get your roadmap for life. Route 66. Start your journey home today.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Walker Wildmon.
Welcome back to The Core here on American Family Radio. Glad to have you with us today on the program. Well, as I teased in the last segment, we have on with us now Paul Vaughn. Paul Vaughn is a pro-lifer and has been advocating for protecting the most vulnerable among us, specifically babies in the womb, for some time now. And he was targeted most notably by the Department of Justice under Merrick Garland and President Biden. Paul Vaughn is with us now. Hey, Paul, welcome to the program.
Good to be with you, Walker. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm very familiar with your story, as familiar as I can be from afar. And our good friend and colleague Steve Crampton here at AFA also works with the Thomas More Society, of which represented you throughout some of this process. And but Paul, before we kind of jump into the nuts and the bolts of the FACE Act and why it should be repealed, remind our audience a little bit about your story and how this was used against you.
Well, sure. We were doing peaceful sidewalk advocacy at the out on the sidewalks of the abortion mills in Tennessee, and there was an event that went on in March of 21 where some folks sat at the door and did an old-fashioned blockade or sit-in. I didn't do that with them. I was there. I know them. They're friends. They're great, men and women of God. And we're very peaceful, nonviolent, everything that's required of a Christian in the political sphere, right? That was March 21. And just as a footnote, June of 22 was the downfall of Roe. Fast forward to October of 22, and I get the loud banging at the door, open up, FBI, black booted thug, armed raid, guns pointed at me in front of my wife and 7 children that were home of our 11 children, and get arrested all the way to federal prison in front of my family. And I was arraigned and let loose on my own recognizance later that day under what's called pretrial release, which is basically parole without having any guilt or anything. But the FACE Act was used primarily, they had to, because I didn't break face, I didn't blockade anybody, I didn't obstruct anybody, I didn't do all the things that are in the FACE law. They had to go back to the 1880s and find this conspiracy act to tie in with the FACE Act to justify arresting me. And so that's how we got into it, Walker. And of course, we can go through the fast forward of the trial and all the injustice and all the things that went on there. But the FACE was definitely the hook that brought us into all that injustice. And ultimately, while we were on appeal in the Sixth Circuit, Trump came down in January with a pardon for all the pro-lifers. And I was, receiving one of those rare documents with Trump's signature on it, saying that I was free from jail.
Yeah.
And I'd already served my 6 months house arrest and everything, that I actually got through the trial. Even though we were pending appeal, the judge didn't waive the sentencing, to see the outcome of the appeal.
This, Paul, once again, we're talking to Paul Vaughn. This act, which was rarely used, from my understanding, was this not like a Clinton era piece of legislation? And correct me if I'm wrong, but give me a little bit of that background on this FACE Act.
Sure. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, Christians were coming out to the abortion clinics in record numbers. And they were doing what we see today, BLM and Antifa and all these people. Well, not even, those groups go so much further than peaceful protests that we're used to back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
But they would sit in at the abortion clinic, right, and sit down and peacefully. And it wasn't a political protest, Walker, as much as it was just identifying with the unborn and trying to be like Christ. Christ, when he got up on the cross, he interposed between us and our enemy. And he laid down his own life that we might live. And so the church felt in the 80s and 90s that sitting at an abortion clinic door, identifying with that unborn baby and saying that their life had value, so much so that we were willing to lay down our lives and give up our freedoms, as identifying that God created that baby in his image. Very effective. Over 77,000 Christians is an estimated arrest number in that movement. And so the only thing the federal government and the pro-abortion lobby could do to stop us was actually pass a federal law aimed at Christian pro-lifers, which is just ironic in our land of the free and home of the brave. Ask the question, any other group in the history of America that did sit-ins and protests, have they ever had a federal law aimed specifically at them? And the answer is only the Christians.
Yeah.
And so the FACE Act, for your audience, is the freedom of access to clinic entrances. It was passed under Clinton in 1994. And it was used in violent cases. So if somebody drove a truck up to an abortion clinic door, or there were a shooting or threats of violence, that's when it was applied. And very rarely, as you said. But under Biden, it got dusted off and brought out of the closet, and it was used, there were 23 people at the time of Trump's pardon that were actually in jail or in process of prosecution, charged with the FACE Act.
Yeah. The text of the statute actually includes houses of worship, i.e., I guess you could say churches, synagogues, etc. Even though I don't remember at all the Department of Justice using this to punish people who block churches, who damage church property, who deface churches, or the hundreds of pro-life clinics in the wake of Roe being overturned, the hundreds of pro-life clinics that were vandalized or targeted in some way. I just don't recall this being used in that manner. So it's definitely been a one-way street as far as how it's been used, which begs the question, does this whole thing need to go? And I think I know the answer based on what our position is, which is yes. But explain to our audience why this act just needs to go. It just doesn't need to be around anymore.
Right. Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, and you're right. There was only like 6 prosecutions, I think, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. It was over 200 churches that were defaced and had, graffiti and things. Pro-life resource centers were defaced and vandalized, and had, one right here in Nashville had a bomb threat and not a bomb threat. They threw a Molotov cocktail at the door, but it didn't explode, didn't go off. And only 6 prosecutions of all those hundreds of events were ever brought out by Biden and the regime there. But every pro-life person received threats of 10 years in prison under Biden. So that's how it was unevenly used. And just on that alone, uneven application makes a law unright and unjust. And many laws have been overturned and thrown out just on that. But the bottom line is without Roe, without a federal right to abortion, then there is no hook, if you will, for this law to have a validity in our nation. And particularly if there's no right to abortion, and if they're not going to enforce it against the churches that are vandalized, then what purpose does it serve other than a tool to persecute people of a dissenting belief in the value of life, if it were, as you were?
Yeah. Paul, and I agree with you 100%, Paul, the part of the kind of the punishment is the process. And,
sure.
Because, how many we're going to get, time in prison. I don't know. You mentioned 20-something were going through the process or already in prison. But at the end of the day, that's not the point. The point is that the left and the Marxist, they use the process in part as the punishment. They did this with President Trump. They did this with you. They did this with Steve Bannon, and countless others, probably over a dozen in total, high-profile figures, if you will. And what I mean by the process is they make you hire up on defense lawyers. Now, thankfully, you had some nonprofit groups that were representing you. I don't know all the ins and outs. But not everybody has pro bono, religious freedom lawyers backing them up. Some of these folks, especially the J6ers, they have to hire up with these big wig lawyers, fork out hundreds of thousands of dollars, take a lien against their house, all for innocence. They're innocent from the get-go, and the defense and the process in many cases is the punishment. So I don't know what you do about that, but it's just so egregious how the process of defending your innocence has become this weapon in and of itself.
Sure. In our case, the process as punishment takes on a whole new meaning. It's not a political term in our family, right? When my wife and children were left in tears, not knowing where I was, what I was taken for, they weren't given any information. They came in heavy like I was a drug lord or something.
Yeah.
I'm a peaceful pro-life father of 11 children who owns a business in this community. I've been here for over a decade, 15 years, and they knew where I was. So it's not like they couldn't have come, hey, Mr. Vaughn, we'd like to talk to you.
Yeah.
But then immediately I go on pretrial release, which, like I said earlier, is actually parole. So before I'm guilty of anything, they're wanting to take my weapons out of my house, come inspect my home. And just think about that as a punishment. My children and everyone were in the home when the gun-toting agent showed up, and then they want to send armed agents into my home to inspect it a few weeks later, right? We had to fight on that. We had to fight them all the way. And like I said, Thomas More did a wonderful job, amazing to be able to come in and support us. And I cannot imagine, going through this without, somebody like that. But that process ultimately was 26 months of that. I couldn't travel out of the Middle District of Tennessee, had to report our income, an incredible invasion of privacy, going through 5 years of tax returns and everything else the court required. It's just, people have no idea how broken our system is. And you hit it on the head with that.
Yeah, I don't. This is infuriating, and there's so many directions we could go here, folks. We're primarily talking with Paul Vaughn about repealing the FACE Act. Before I get us too sidetracked here, one thing, Paul, that I mentioned in the early days of this second Trump administration is I'm thinking restitution here, because the amount of emotional and life trauma that your family has been brought because you're a pro-lifer and because you don't want babies to be slaughtered in their mother's womb every day, it's just unfathomable. And so I was a proponent of the Trump DOJ reaching a settlement agreement with every victim of J6 and the FACE Act and pay you guys and basically recoup you for hundreds of thousands of dollars in emotional and other damage that has come from this. So I guess that ship has sailed, but it's just infuriating to me that the federal government, there's literally no downside for the federal government weaponizing these statutes to go against their political opponents. right? I mean,
that's right.
The Biden folks, I mean, what are they out? They're out and they're getting paid for this. And
well,
then they
not only that.
Yeah, they're not out anything. Go ahead.
Well, Walker, here's the way our system works, and it's broken on both sides. I mean, I appreciate Trump and he pardoned us, but there are plenty of things that need fixing. And I know he's, ostensibly trying, and there are things going on. But look, Kristen Clark, the lead FBI investigator, Mark Schaefer, and the whole cabal, right, that was involved in the Civil Rights Division, abuse of my civil rights. Well, when the powers changed, all they did is go and get some gigs at some cush colleges, right, making good money, training the next generation how to do the same abuse as they did.
Yeah.
And that's our broken system. So, we're funding all these Ivy League colleges. And then when the government people get in trouble or the administration comes in, they rotate over there for 4 or 8 years, make up a little bit of money, train the next generation, and then they come back and do it again. There's literally no downside, as you said.
Yeah, you have to, the Trump administration, and I don't know what they're doing behind the scenes, but I can tell you this, just looking from the outside, it's not enough. Because, I mean, if I don't see people in handcuffs, it's not enough on this matter. And at a minimum, these agents ought to be investigated. There should be formal complaints within the agencies filed against them. So when you come back, you got a lot of explaining to do. If you want to come back and work for Kamala Harris in 4 years, then you got a lot of explaining to do to get back in this agency. And clearances ought to be pulled. I mean, the whole 9 yards. We ought to make it to where agents at the DOJ and the FBI really think twice about whether they want to be political hacks or not. And if they do want to be political hacks, they're going to have to weigh the cost and take the risk associated with unfairly prosecuting political opponents. I can't stand these people getting out, scot-free, so to speak, on this. But I'll give you the last word. We got 1 minute left.
All right, just real quick. We are engaged in a countersuit. The problem with tort law is there's no emotional abuse, none of that. It's very, very limited in what you can do and what you can claim. So we are seeking justice, not really even for ourselves, but just for like what you just stated. There needs to be accountability. There needs to be some downside. If people want to act irresponsibly and they want to act like, Nazi thugs, let's just call it what it is, then there needs to be accountability to it. And so the only way we could find to go do that after the pardon is to come back and actually file charges against them. And so we're still pursuing that as we speak today, still engaged with the DOJ and the FBI on those discussions. And hopefully, by God's grace, we'll prevail there and send a small message, at least to the next crowd.
Good. Well, that ship hasn't sailed. I'll take that word back. Hey, Paul, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Walker, thanks for having me, man. Great to meet you.
Absolutely. Paul Vaughn, defender of life and prosecuted by the Biden administration, both literally and metaphorically on multiple counts. And it's been going on for years now. And I think the DOJ owes Paul and his family a big payday. That's a fact. And every single FBI agent who participated and was complicit in this political hit job should be punished within all extents and parameters of the FBI. And you just can't have this again. You got to punish them. You got to make them pay. See you next time.